I know that I can see Rod out of the corner of my eye, so I'm going to bring him in at this stage. Do we have some emails or some feedback? Or
I just wanted to comment that our furthest flung tweeter is certainly the person in Hawaii, as far as we know where people come from. So I was very impressed, and especially as Safita knows. Now, who is this person in Hawaii?
Yeah, can I introduce Dr. Unitec, who teaches in Hawaii. He happens to be, as I said before, to share the same passion about growing the Tongan language by internationally just getting in touch. There are 4 of us. Melenaite Tamoeflau is known to most people here. And of course we have an Australian counterpart who's another woman. So there are 2 women, 2 men, and we live in 3 different countries. And we believe that we have got what it takes in terms of the tools that we have today so that we could actually talk to each other daily. And we're building a if you like, it's a storehouse of new Tongan words being created as a way of advancing Tongan so that it becomes as competitive as English. I mean, that's the whole aim behind this, is to enable Tongan to be as competitive as English so that Tongans anywhere would have the tools to be able to use it into the future. And I think, John, on what you've just stated earlier, I guess the realism that I wish to put on the table, in spite of our wish to have politicians support this, is that unless all these things are done simultaneously, we will never achieve it. And that's probably a very difficult thing to have to say in a group like this, because you talk about the horse with the pedigree. I think that the problem is organizing the race day meeting is what's stopping it, right? If you have this horse running around exactly, yeah. So that in a way we certainly don't want to give up, but you can certainly just take the horse for a trot without calling everybody in to come and lay bets on it, and that's what we think may well be the case. 4 languages, 5 languages if you must, for New Zealand taxpayer to be able to come to the party with. I would like to put this on the table. Seeing that 3 of the languages are already in palliative care, wouldn't it be better to do all we can for the 2 languages that are more likely to survive? Well, I know the Cook Islanders and the...
That's a big call,
I know it's going to be a big call.
I think the Niueans and the Cook Islanders and the Tokelauans would like that.
This is what it may take, because to some extent, I believe Tonga is primarily responsible for Tongan language throughout its existence. It is dying in Tonga, and we just had a look at, we'll talk about the Tongan language policy. It is likely undergoing the same thing that, say, Cook Island Māori, Niuean, and Tokelauan went through 40, 50 years ago. Yet, the doctor has already signaled that there is something wrong with the patient. I don't believe that John's prescription is likely to do it for here in New Zealand. It's more likely to be a vai Tonga or a potion from Tonga administered right around the world with a huge dose of realism. That's what I want to put on the table.
So is that the Tongan drug you're talking about? We'll come back to that. Was there anything else there, Rod?
I just wanted to remind our online audience of the ways to get in touch with us. I'm not sure what Twitter is in Tongan, but...
What is it? What is the new convention or the word for Twitter? In Tongan that you've come up with?
We brought that up as a word to be used on texting. Texting was it gave us most difficulty because the word tuita is almost Tongan by pronunciation. In fact, it's the name of one of our nobles.
Yeah, that's right.
And the fear is that if we use the name Twitter as if it was a word to use for tweeting, we might have to come across the royal family's wrath.
That's right.
But definitely text is an issue for us, and we think we have found a word for it.
And it is?
It is tātohi. Tātohi. Tā is a short for telephone, and tohi is to write. So,
well, that and the hashtag Unitec FTF will get us through to it.
Combination.
And then also emails, uftf11@gmail.com with a written in the subject heading so we know it's a comment, or webcam if you want to come on live. So
thank you.
Stay engaged. Thanks very much.
Great.
Sandra, perhaps could I just reply to one thing? Could I just say to Safita, extend an invitation to all the panellists to say that the things that we're talking about tonight actually exist in Auckland, that there are 27 bilingual schools in Auckland doing the things that we're talking about, including Tongan schools, and the results are emerging from that research are in fact showing, I think, the way to the future. So one of the good things to be done would be to make sure that the politicians and the community leaders visit those schools and see for themselves, you know, the reality, and then they're able to read the research, as Sam has had access to that research.
Great. I just also want to let the studio audience know that if you'd like to ask a question, please put your hand up. We've got some helpers who've got microphones, so we actually need you to talk into the microphone so that our online community can actually hear. But if you'd like to join at any stage, please let me know. I know we have some staunch Niueans in the audience who may have some comments on some of the things that we've talked about. But I suppose the question that I want to throw in here is that, does it rest on the government? Are we pinning everything? I know you said, Seth, that there's more than that, but are we looking to the government to solve this question? Is that the answer? Or how do we all contribute to this in terms of coming up with something that's going to work?
Can I make a comment before? Just reflecting on some of the things. First of all, the Pacifica Education Plan does not stop Pacifica languages happening. And the Tupu and Folanga series are paused as the ministry does this from time to time to make sure the resource works well. And
stopped,
it's not. It is paused while an investigation is happening.
Yeah.
But the interesting thing is that we have a warehouse full of Tupu and Folanga as back copies, and there isn't a run on those. So they are still available, and new resources have been printed while we're waiting for the report back.
When's that due, by the way? When's the report due?
In August.
In August. Okay.
And the other one, my understanding is, and this would be really interesting leading on to your question, is that the Maori language really came on board because the Maori community took it upon themselves. They got tired of waiting for someone else to do something. And they really took it upon themselves and started the Kohanga Reo movement, of which the Pacific community then looked and started the early childhood education services. So I guess my response to that is that it's got to happen everywhere. If our expectations is that it can only happen in early childhood services and in schools, then that might not happen, like what Seth was saying. You know, we've got to be thinking as a community about where else this might. So the learning in school needs to be supported by what's happening at home and what's happening in a community.
Yeah, look, I agree. Touching on Folongan, and you know, I hear this word cuts. It's been paused. It's been reviewed, as most good government programs should be reviewed, and a decision will be made as to its continuation. But I've talked to a number of educationalists in the community, and some are actually for it, some are against. It's the response has actually been mixed, and if it does get replaced, if a decision is made that way, then we'll find materials that will actually serve the purpose that they should fulfil for those, you know, for those language materials. So, you know, I said it at the beginning. I actually think, you know, if it's like, and Seth makes some pretty good valid points in terms of you can do this stuff at early childhood level, but if you're not actually practicing it, it's like anything, whether it's rugby or it's, you know, it's your golf. If you're not doing it every day, and you're not doing it in forums that actually matter, then you actually do lose it, and that's what happens. So, you know, the government can provide the resources, they can provide the classrooms, as we're doing, you know, around the country, the 91 million that we've tagged for early childhood education. Yep, for both Māori, Pacific and high needs families that we're putting into these types of programs. Some are full immersion, some are bilingual, and some are just your standard ECEs. You know, you can have the buildings, you can have all the materials. If you're not using it and if you're not practicing it, it becomes very difficult to continue that on. And, you know, that's the challenge. you know, and I don't sit here with all the answers. I'd love to hear from the audience how they see us promoting our languages in our homes. You know, and I talk to a lot of my Māori colleagues, you know, and they say the same things. We've experienced this with our own languages, and this is in Aotearoa, New Zealand. This is our home, and you know, you know, it's tough, and I'd love to hear from the audience about that.
Pacific language bill or you know, law, would that actually help give us some priority in terms of, you know, the resources, the actual, I know you've talked about 91 million, that's spread over three, you know, groups there, in terms of the priority and the emphasis being put on Pacific languages?
Well, the details yet to come. You know, we've talked to John, Judy, Rachel, you know, I've seen a draft of the bill. You know, it's in the detail. I can't answer that until someone actually formalises a bill, puts it before us, and we consider what the clauses actually mean.
That would help, wouldn't it?
I couldn't answer that question until you actually present something.
Well, I mean, as a researcher, let's just put on the table that the Ministry of Pacific Affairs commissioned research from Professor Stephen May and other international experts about what would need to happen if Pacific languages were to be revived and survived, and their recommendation was really clear that because the languages lack status among the Palangi community and among our own Pacific families because of what's happened to them in the islands in education, it's the issue of raising the status of Pacific languages in New Zealand that needs to happen, and they need to be shown to be linked to work and economy and success and the well-being of the Pacific community. Those were their...
I like what you're saying, but you know, what does it mean? Well, you know, put it on paper.
There was a very specific report that outlines those things, and that included all the measures that were possible to raise the status of the languages, because as Stephen pointed out, that the communities have been themselves since 1985 at least working to revive the languages. The communities started the 33 bilingual programs. The communities fund those programs. The communities train the teachers. The communities resource them. And apart from the tupu and whalaunga, the government has done nothing whatsoever. Successive governments, I'm sorry, Carmel. Nothing whatsoever to support the communities for 20 years. And so our families have said, we are working our hearts out for 20 years, and it's time that the government came to the party, and the research from the best evidence that New Zealand can commission is that the government now needs to come to the party and support what the communities clearly want. It's not a matter of pushing it down everybody's throat. The families that want bilingual education, you know, are possibly very few. But they're asking for government support, and they have walked the mile, Sam.
And I agree with some of what John has said, and in terms of the community. I mean, Lesieli said it, that Māori were responsible for starting the revival of their own language, but Pacific have been too. Everything that has been achieved to date has been done, I think, because of the determination of our Pacific community, and then pushing the government. I think that the former Labour government particularly was responsive. I mean, I've looked at the results there. We went from, in 2002, I think, 1998, we went from something like 167 qualified early childhood Pasifika education teachers to almost 900, you know, over that 10-year period. So there was an investment in there, and there were Pacific scholarships that were there to entice Pacific people to get into teaching, because there was an understanding that that would make a difference. There was a huge increase in the number of early childhood centres. There was the investment into Pasifika Radio with the Pacific Radio Network that was launched in 2002 by Vui Mark Goshi in the last election. In our policy manifesto, we wanted to move towards a Pacific TV channel. So there were things that were being done. Did we go far enough? Some would say yes, some would say no. But I don't think it's fair to say that the former government, at least, I don't think it's fair to say that they weren't responsive, because I do think they were responsive. I do think there was a lot that happened, but it was done because of the determination of our Pacific community and supported by a responsive government at that time.